Hey everyone, so let's dive in and learn about some heading tags this time in HTML. So to start, what we need to do first is let's create another page and explore those headings. So we've got our link to some daggers here, so let's create a new file. Call it dagger.html, save that, refresh. And nothing exists, right? So we need to go create that file. Okay, great. So that's copied. We've got Dagger now for refresh. There it is. But you can see that we've just copied that file, so it's exactly the same. So this is why HTML isn't the greatest for making new pages, because we don't want to have to duplicate this every single time. So we'll use something like PHP to include the same markup or the same HTML, so we're not having to rewrite it every time we create a new page. But we're not really going to get into that just yet. But just so you know, if you're kind of wondering, hey, that looks very similar, you're correct, right? So maybe this page only has just the one link to this page, which would also make no sense, but that's besides the point. So what we really want to get into here is our heading. So we've got our H1 dagger, great. So we have H1 through H6. The next one would be an H2, and so on and so forth, right? Maybe we should put some stuff in here. So we got H5, and then the very last one, H6, right? So let's see what that looks like out of the box. Okay, great. There's all of our headings. Now, there's some right and wrong things to do. So again, this is just the basics for this video. So why don't we get into those basics? So there's nothing smaller than an H6. I've seen designers put down things in style guides for H7 and H8. That does not exist. So if you see that, you might want to ask them, what's the purpose here? You never know these days. So some of the stuff might seem pretty straightforward or simple, but hey, we're all learning, so that's okay. You only ever want one H1 on your page. Now, yes, you can technically have more than one H1 if you put it in the proper markup. However, all of the reading that I've done, the best practices say you would only want one single H1 that relates to your link and to the same name as in your URL. The name of the page should reflect exactly what text is inside of your H1 here, okay? After that, after we have one single H1 on the page for our markup, you can have several other H2s, and that's fine. Dragon 1, well, I guess this would be Dragon 2, whatever. So we got Dragon 2. That's fine. What we don't want to have happen is we wouldn't want something like this. We don't want to go from an H1 to an H3, because what that does is it skips a heading. And that is bad for accessibility and just the overall hierarchy of our headings. Because we can see here there's a big visual gap between how large this one is and how much smaller the third heading is. So you don't ever want to do that. So you always want to make sure that immediately after your main heading on your page that there is an H2 present before writing your H3. Now this is where it gets tricky, because sometimes in our designs, the designer will have headings, and they'll match the style guide, but they'll look significantly smaller when in fact an H2 should be there instead of an H3. So this is where we would get into something like CSS to style those H3s to maybe look a little bigger. And that's also got some gotchas that you don't typically want to alter your styles so much for all of your headings. You want your headings to be as consistent as possible, so that way they look the same throughout your entire website. And there might be some slight differences with color or different things like that. So again, to get back into the hierarchy here, this would be appropriate. We could have an H2, so we'll just call this our Magic Wizard H2. And then down here, we can have another grouping of another H2 and H3. But you might be thinking, well, didn't we just skip, where's our H4, right? Do I have to go all the way down the line? No, that's the thing that's nice. So when we want to start our new heading, as long as this heading is larger than the last one, we wouldn't want to go down to like an H6 and then start our next heading with maybe an H5 unless at all related to this section. We would always want to make sure we go up to the next largest heading to start this section. So maybe this is the Black Wizard or something like that, right? And this is our Magic Wizard, and then we could have a Red Wizard and so on and so forth. So that's okay to have headings like that. Headings can also be included inside of our actual header tag. But we'll get into that when we start covering articles and sections and that kind of thing. So just know that there's a proper hierarchy for our headings. We only ever want to use one H1. And then the next important tag when it comes to SEO, for search engine optimization, is the H2. So we want to make sure whatever text we put in our H2s is important. And then after that, we have the H3 tag, which is also important, but it doesn't have as high of an importance as the H2s do. So that's the basics of headings. Again, you always want to make sure you have one H1 on any of your pages. That's a good thing to have. You're not required to necessarily have any other headings unless you need to display that content. So hopefully that's a quick, short, simple example of how to use them and why, and we'll get into kind of marking up our content later with them. Alrighty, thanks.